There are many ways to examine the musical taste of Marcel Proust, and the role of music in remembrance of things past is great work. We could have started this lecture recital with the famous Neapolitan song, O Sole Mio, which fascinated the narrator and hero of the novel in Venice, or with these cabaret singers that Proust loved so much that he could attend the same concert of the famous singer Félix Mayol every night during a whole month. We will end our evening with the last quartets of Beethoven that Proust worshipped. At a famous meeting with Picasso, Stravinsky, and Joyce at the Ritz Hotel in Paris, Proust, showing up at 3 in the morning, praised these quartets to Stravinsky, who understandably thought it was the whim of a Parisian snob. Proust was like a sponge, absorbing everything life could offer him. He was curious about people, famously arriving in the middle of the night at his friends and exhausting them with his conversation lasting hours. He was curious about politics, defending passionately Dreyfus, a Jewish officer accused of high treason in the famous Dreyfus affair. He was curious about art, translating 2 books of the British art critic John Ruskin. But music was one of his greatest passions. He used to hum tunes all the time, from operettas, arias to Pelléas of Debussy. He sight-read at the piano and loved the famously difficult to read and to appreciate La Bonne Chanson by Fauré before its premiere. He shouted excerpts of Parsifal with friends while visiting old castles. Like the poets Baudelaire and Mallarmé, he has been deeply influenced by Wagner, whose total art he emulated in his total novel. Proust was a sponge, not a man of action. Rich, he did not have to work for a living. Suffering from disabling asthma, he could not have a regular job. He composed his great work lying on his bed. His illness, however, allowed his sensitivity to the world to grow. He identified with Arkel, the old and ill king in Pelléas and Mélisande, old kings who utters constantly powerless oracles. Markel and Arkel becomes even Markel in some letters. He identified also with Parsifal, the candid hero who observes without understanding before he reaches finally the revelation of the Grail. Remembrance is indeed a Bildungsroman, a formative novel. And the narrator reaches at last the revelation of art in the 7th and last volume of the novel. On his way, he will go through impressionistic experiences, the Madeleine episode being one of the most famous. We will come on it later. And a full sentimental education. The title of the 2nd volume of the novel, À l'ombre des jeunes filles en fleurs, is a direct reference to the flower girls, jeunes filles, fleurs, of the 2nd act of Parsifal. The narrator will also be inspired by artists that Proust invented for his novel. Bergotte, the writer, Elstir, the painter, and Vinteuil, the musician, and his 2 major works, a sonata and a septet. No real work or musician would have matched the ideal Proust had in mind. These ideal figures condensed many real musicians and works, but none of them is the one, as we will see. In only 50 pages inside this huge total novel, about 3,000 pages, the longest novel ever written according to the Guinness Book of Records, music will help Proust utter what art is. The Sonata of Vinteuil is heard for the first time in Swann's Love, in the 1st volume of Remembrance. Swann's Love focuses on Swann's love story, which takes place before the birth of the narrator. It's like the pre-story of the story. Swann is an idle aesthete in love with the demi-mondaine or courtesan, Odette de Crécy. She introduced him to the salon of Madame Verdurin, a snobbish bourgeois who loves art and artists. They listen to the sonata for the first time in this salon. Swann, who has artistic ambition, perceives, quote, a superior reality in one of the phrases of the sonata. These phrases becomes famously, quote, the national anthem of their love. But like Amphotas in Parsifal, Swann stays powerless, and this sonata Grail does not inspire him any artistic work. Only later, the narrator, Parsifal, will receive the revelation of the sonata through Swann and Odette, who has become Madame Swann, and he, the narrator, will be inspired to write Remembrance of Things Past. He will have for that to give up love and will sacrifice his life to art. To reach this ultimate step, he will have to answer his great question in his quest of himself as an artist, quote, was there in art a deeper reality where our true personality can find an expression not to be found in the acts of life? It is the aesthetic revelation of the Septet of Vinteuil that will answer partially the question, giving the narrator the revelation of eternity in art, time regained, title of the last volume of Remembrance. In this lecture recital, we will follow the narrator's way towards art. We will experience Proust through his texts, through his way of thinking, through the music that he loved. Proust discouraged repeatedly all attempts, and there have been many of them, to find what the sources of the sonata or of the septet are. But through the works that accompanied him all his life, we will try to recreate a Proustian atmosphere that may contribute to throw light on his work and give you the desire of reading it. You may consider starting the reading tomorrow, since we are celebrating tomorrow the exact centenary of the publication of Swann's Way, published exactly on November the 14th, 1913. Proust was interested in all music. In a paradoxical text praising bad music, he refers thus to low-class popular music such as the music played in the cabaret. Proust writes, please refer to the quotation number 1 of the program notes. I hope you all have, and I will use it you will use it quite often. I will from now on mainly read quotations in French for you to appreciate the sound of Proust music, but you also have the translation in the libretto. Quote, détestez la mauvaise musique, ne la méprisez pas. Comme on la joue, la chante bien plus passionnément que la bonne, bien plus qu'elle, elle s'est peu à peu remplie du rêve et des larmes des hommes. Qu'elle vous soit par là vénérable. Sa place, nulle dans l'histoire de l'art, est immense dans l'histoire sentimentale des sociétés. Le peuple, la bourgeoisie, l'armée, la noblesse, comme ils ont les mêmes facteurs, porteurs du deuil qui les frappe ou du bonheur qui les comble, ont les mêmes invisibles messagers d'amour, les mauvais musiciens. Proust is also sensitive to sounds in general. They trigger his imagination. In a beautiful passage, the narrator is in his bedroom in Paris with closed windows. Quotation number 2. Je m'éveillais de bonne heure. Dehors, des thèmes populaires, finement écrits pour des instruments variés, orchestraient légèrement l'air matinal. Louis, ce sens délicieux, nous apporte la compagnie de la rue, dont elle nous retrace toutes les lignes, dessine toutes les formes qui y passent, nous en montrant la couleur. Le marchand d'escargots parle, les escargots, ils sont frais, ils sont beaux, avec la tristesse et le vague de Maeterlinck musicalement transposé par Debussy. With this reference to Péléas and its lyrical declamation, Proust mixes sounds, popular way of speaking, poetry and opera in order to recreate the atmosphere of a Parisian street. Proust speaks and writes often in musical terms. He loves to harmonize music and language. Before him, the symbolist poets had already emphasized what Baudelaire called a correspondence between music and literature. Verlaine, as well, in his poetic art, takes music as a model for poetry. Quotation number 3. De la musique avant toute chose, plus vague et plus soluble dans l'air, rien de plus cher que la chanson grise, où l'indécis au précis se joint, et tout le reste n'est que littérature. The symbolist poets, Verlaine, Mallarmé, and arguably more or less all the French poets of the end of the 19th century, are sensitive to the music of the words. They dream of a suggestive, grayish, blurry song, expression that will give the title of the most famous collection of melodies by Reynaldo Hahn, Chanson Grise, that you heard in the poem. Setting in this collection sets poem of Verlaine into music. We need to mention here the importance of Reynaldo Hahn in Proust's life. This composer was an important figure of Parisian salon. He and Proust were lovers for 2 years, and they have been later lifelong friends. They were discussing music often, sharing the same taste for bad music. Hahn wrote marvelous melodies and operettas. He premiered himself Les Chansons Grises in front of Verlaine, who wept hearing them. Proust praised Reynaldo Hahn in his book Contre Sainte-Beuve, speaking, quote, of his melancholy and beautiful voice that have a sweep and shiver, burning us all one after the other in a silent and solemn ondulation of wit in the wind. We will now listen to a melody of Reynaldo Hahn setting a poem of Verlaine. This poem is the 4th poem without a title of the collection La Bonne Chanson. No less than 130 musicians have set this poem into music. Hahn, but also Gabriel Fauré, Ernest Chausson, Max Reger, Igor Stravinsky, who even orchestrated his melody, I think, in the 50s, 51 or 52. It is the French poem that has been set to music the most ever. Hahn named this melody after the last line of the poem, L'heure exquise. It is an example of musical impressionism with its arabesque and delicate harmonies, an example of shivering too at the sublime cadences. You will find the lyrics of this poem on the libretto under quotation number 4, and I will now call Danielle on stage to sing this melody. now listen to the version of Gabriel Fauré on the same poem. The title is La Lune Blanche. It's the first line of the poem. Proust has been a lover of Fauré all his life, exchanging lots of letters throughout his life with him. This melody, the one of Fauré, seems to me very close to the art of Proust, if we can transpose music in literature. The complex and refined sensuality of Fauré's harmony underlines the depth of the poetic images. The music follows very precisely the nuances of the text and transposes them in a long, supple melodic line that encompasses all the layers of the poem and that reminds us of the long phrases of Proust. Thanks to Fauré's long, supple phrases, we can now answer an important question. How is Proust's literary language musical, in a way? The answer is obvious to me, in his phrase, the famous endless phrases of Proust. Even if the narrator dreams sometimes of named sonorities, like a poet, Proust is not a poet, he's a novelist. The phrase unfolding through time is what interests him. We can hear this love for long, supple phrases in a beautiful text of Proust on the art of Frédéric Chopin, musician that both Fauré and Proust dearly loved. Quotation number 5. Le pianiste caresse les phrases au long col sinueux et démesuré de Chopin, si libre, si flexible, si tactile, qui commencent par chercher et essayer leur place en dehors et bien loin de la direction de leur départ, bien loin du point où on avait pu espérer qu'atteindrait leur attouchement, et qui ne se joue dans cet écart de fantaisie que pour revenir plus délibérément d'un retour plus prémédité, avec plus de précision, comme sur un cristal qui résonnerait à faire crier « vous frapper au cœur ». One example of this supple musical phrase that stretches the usual syntax to explore sensations in depth is the famous episode of the Madeleine. I had to speak about this episode at some point. Whereas the narrator had only a vague memory of his childhood, the test of a Madeleine, reminding him the one his aunt used to offer him as a child, opens the gates of the past for him. Please appreciate that the 7 volumes of remembrance, in a way, come from this revelatory episode. Here is the final paragraph of this deciphering of the sensation, the taste of a Madeleine, quotation number 6, an example of a long phrase. It's a small excerpt. Et dès que j'eus reconnu le goût du morceau de madeleine trempé dans le tilleul que me donnait ma tante, aussitôt la vieille maison grise sur la rue où était sa chambre vint comme un décor de théâtre s'appliquer au petit pavillon donnant sur le jardin qu'on avait construit pour mes parents sur ses derrières, ce pan tronqué que seul j'avais revu jusque-là. Et avec elle, la maison, la ville, depuis le matin jusqu'au soir et par tous les temps, la place où on m'envoyait avant déjeuner, les rues où j'allais faire des courses, les chemins qu'on prenait si le temps était beau. Et comme dans ce jeu où les Japonais s'amusent à tremper dans un bol de porcelaine rempli d'eau de petits morceaux de papier jusque-là indistincts qui, à peine y sont-ils plongés, s'étirent, se contournent, se colorent, se différencient, deviennent des fleurs, des maisons, des personnages consistants et reconnaissables, de même maintenant, toutes les fleurs de notre jardin et celles du parc de M. Swann et les nymphéas de la Vivonne et les bonnes gens du village et leurs petits logis et l'église et tout Combray et ses environs, tout cela qui prend forme et solidité est sorti, ville et jardin, de ma tasse de thé. This asthmatic phrase, with its interpolated clauses, its virtuosic span, its intense finale, is in a way to me very close of some Chopin phrases. The fantasy, the invention of Proust or Chopin phrases can be compared to a fisherman's net that try to catch all of the artist's memories and perceptions. These phrases succeed in orchestrating sensations in a vast polyphony, reminding us of Chopin's love for Bach, or in a vast cathedral. Proust compares often his work to a cathedral, an image that Claude Debussy, the musician, and Claude Monet, the painter, at the same time valued also in their work. In his net, Proust catches some important fishes, motifs that haunt the whole novel and open the gates of the narrator's consciousness. The Madeleine is an example of such a motif. Another one is a musical phrase, the famous phrase of Vinteuil's Sonata, which will be a motif going through the whole novel. We will focus now on Vinteuil's Sonata, or the Sonata of Vinteuil. The sonata is heard by Swann in the Salon of Madame Verdurin. You remember, hopefully. Salons play a crucial role in the novel. Proust described them as paradoxical places, both ridiculous by their snobbishness and meaningful by championing avant-garde music and revealing some true love for music. Madame Verdurin, for example, championing Vinteuil, is described, quotation number 7, a very short one, as, quote, a deity presiding over the musical rites, goddess of Wagnerism and sick headaches. In salons, these temples of art, one is like Parsifal in the Grail Castle. One has to decipher attitudes and conventions. One never knows what they are worth. Salons are therefore important in the narrator's artistic quest. He has to decipher human behaviors and try to distinguish some meaningful contours, sort of melodies that can help him understand life and will become motifs or themes in his novel. When the sonata is performed the first time in Swann's way, Proust focused on the perception of Swann. Swann has to decipher what he is listening to. Here is part of the famous description of these auditions. Quotation number 8. Il avait entendu une œuvre musicale exécutée au piano et au violon. D'abord, il n'avait goûté que la qualité matérielle des sons sécrétés par les instruments. Mais, à un moment donné, sans pouvoir nettement distinguer un contour, donner un nom à ce qui lui plaisait, charmé tout d'un coup, il avait cherché à recueillir la phrase ou l'harmonie, il ne savait lui-même, qui passait et qui lui avait ouvert plus largement l'âme, comme certaines odeurs de roses circulant dans l'air humide du soir ont la propriété de dilater nos narines. Phrase or harmony, how vague. However, Swann's impression is deep and distinctive. And it is an erotic experience as well. Quotation number 9. With a slow and rhythmical movement, the phrase led him towards new vistas, like a woman he would have seen for a moment passing by, although he does not even know her name or whether he will ever see her again. Let us try to experience the sensual epiphany of a phrase or harmony with a violin sonata Proust loved. We will hear the first and second movement of the first violin sonata of Gabriel Fauré. This sonata, composed in 1875-76, is marked with joy and love. Fauré had just gotten engaged to Marianne Viardot, who broke the engagement in 1877, by the way. Will you distinguish a little phrase in the Schumann-like entanglement of the Allegro, the first movement? Will you let yourself be rocked by the Barcarolle-like Andante? Will you dream of Venice, meaningful place for Fauré, but also for Proust and for Wagner? I will invite now Ambroise and Stéphanie to come on stage and play this violin sonata. Vinteuil's Sonata, I hope you remember what happened before this marvelous piece, won't inspire Swann artistically. Instead of focusing on music itself, Swann tries to know who the composer is and to imagine what his life is. He indulges in erudition and curiosity. He misses the essential. Proust criticized all his life the critics who tried to explain the work by the real life, which was very common in the 19th century, and maybe today sometimes. Concerning Vinteuil's Sonata, Proust has been asked many times to reveal the real model of this fictional work. Here, what he has to say in a famous letter to Jacques de Lacretelle, it's the quotation number 10. Dans la mesure où la réalité m'a servi, mesure très faible à vrai dire, la petite phrase est dans la soirée sainte verte, la phrase charmante mais enfin médiocre d'une sonate pour piano et violon de Saint-Saëns. Musicien que je n'aime pas. Dans la même soirée, un peu plus loin, je ne serais pas surpris qu'en parlant de la petite phrase, juste penser à l'enchantement du vendredi saint. Quand le piano et le violon gémissent comme deux oiseaux qui se répondent, j'ai pensé à la sonate de Franck, surtout jouée par Enesco, Franck dont le quatuor apparaît dans un des volumes suivants. Les trémolos qui couvrent la petite phrase chez les Verdurin m'ont été suggérés par un prélude de Lohengrin, mais elle-même, à ce moment-là, par une chose de Schubert. Elle est dans la même soirée Verdurin un ravissant morceau de piano de Fauré, la ballade pour piano et orchestre, selon une autre source. In other terms, Proust is inspired by many pieces, but none of them is the one. And by his casualness, Proust makes a point. It is not an important issue. Art inspires new artists or writers, but erudition is useless in a way. Second mistake of Swann leaves out the music itself and its appeal to associate the phrase to an earthly love, Odette. As charming as it is, he falls from an out-of-this-world beauty to a real woman that he tries to embellish with artistic ornaments. He also compares Odette to a Botticelli figure. The little phrase, quotation number 11, becomes the national anthem of the love. The result is that Swann contemplated the little phrase less in its own light than as a pledge, a token of his love. So much that he had abandoned the idea of getting some professional to play over to him the whole sonata, of which he still knew no more than this one passage. Why do you want the rest? Odette had asked him. Our little piece. That's all we need. Swann and Odette tear to pieces the sonata. In this quest for art that is remembrance, it is a dead end. Narcissistic like Amphotas, Swann does not kill the swan in himself, which Parsifal will do. He betrays the symbolism of music that carries us into another world to make it a symbol of himself as a lover. Let us hear Le Cygne, the Swan of Ravel. You will find the lyrics in the program note under number 12. The Swan, Le Cygne, mocks in a way the myth of Lohengrin and the narcissism of romantic heroes. It will be our farewell to Swann.
bruit du bec, la voix nourrissante et ramène un verre. Il engraisse comme une oie.
However, Swann's experience has not been useless in the progression of the novel. Even if he has not made the leap ultimately, he caught a glimpse at art and music. When the little phrase speaks to Swann and, quote, tells him what she had to tell him, we can see that music is, for Proust, a language. Like his mother, like Proust's mother, telling him stories in the first page of the novel, music tells a story that carry us in another world. Proust refers often to Wagner and his powerful art of storytelling through motifs. Motif. This word is important for Proust, both in music and in literature. Quotation number 13. Swann tenait les motifs musicaux pour de véritables idées, d'un autre monde, d'un autre ordre, idées voilées de ténèbres, inconnues, impénétrables à l'intelligence, mais qui n'en sont pas moins parfaitement distinctes les unes des autres. Hence, a paradox. Music speaks directly to our sensitivity, but through motives, it brings us something precise, meaningful, like ideas and phrases. The theme of Tristan in Tristan und Isolde by Wagner being one of the most famous examples of this new field of feelings brought by a motive, a musical phrase. What a deep remark that fits so perfectly the musicians that Proust refers to the most in his novel, namely, in order of occurrences, Wagner, Beethoven, Debussy, Bach. Music is a language of motifs, and it reveals in us feelings that we would not have suspected without her. It does not reflect our impressions, it cultivates our soul, who without it would be, quote, a great night. Let us hear now the first movement of the sonata for violin and piano written by César Franck in 1886. This work has also been composed in reference with love, since the famous violinist Eugène Ysaÿe asked Franck to write a sonata for his wedding. It will be played tonight by the first violinist of the modern Ysaÿe quartet. This Allegro moderato, with its first theme, it's him, Guillaume. This Allegro ben moderato illustrates perfectly a beautiful page of Proust on a musical dialogue. Quotation number 14. Le beau dialogue que Swann entendit entre le piano et le violon, la suppression des mots humains, loin d'y laisser régner la fantaisie comme on aurait pu croire, l'en avait éliminé. Jamais le langage parlé ne fut si inflexiblement nécessité, ne connut à ce point la pertinence des questions, l'évidence des réponses. D'abord, le piano se plaignit comme un oiseau abandonné de sa compagne. Le violon l'entendit et lui répondit comme d'un arbre voisin. C'était comme au commencement du monde. on stage the quartet Lamy, the Lamy Quartet, for the last part of the evening. So I will ask you to be patient 2 minutes for them to set up. In the second volume of the work, within a budding grove, Odette Swann plays the Sonata for Marcel. It is what we call the transmission scene. From now on, the narrator will take the lead in the quest for art. But it is only in the 5th volume, The Captive, that the narrator listens to another piece by Vinteuil, the septet, that will lead to the revelation of art to the narrator. Here again, it is difficult to find the source for the septet, the second great work of Vinteuil. At an early stage of Proust's writing, when Remembrance was divided only into 4 volumes, the septet was a quartet, more or less the one of Franck, according to the letter of Lacretelle that I read to you. Then it became a sextet when the novel expanded and was divided into 6 volumes. To make it more complicated, Proust mentions also in a letter the piano quintet of Franck as an inspiration. The important information here seems that the septet is the great work of Vinteuil and that it matches symbolically the 7 volumes of Remembrance. It brings also the epiphany that leads the narrator to write his work. Based on the numerous references of Proust to Debussy, Franck, and Beethoven, we will try to reconstruct for you an ideal septet with movements of quartets that Proust loved passionately and that have some affinity with meaningful passages and specific passages describing the septet. We will first listen to a piece that refers to the excerpt number 15 of the libretto. This excerpt is a call for a new morning and is very reminiscent of Debussy, the revolutionary musician, and its orchestral work, La Mer, with its first movement, from dawn to noon on the sea, but also of the first movement of the quartet of Debussy, premiered by the Isaïe Quartet, the Quatuor Isaïe, in 1893. And it will be played tonight by the Lamy Quartet. Here, very far from the impressionistic mist and from the moonlight. This rough movement is paradoxically reminiscent of Cocteau, Jean Cocteau's manifesto Le Coq et l'Arlequin, which could be translated into English as The Rooster and the Harlequin. Proust, friend of Cocteau, loved this work, a reaction against Debussy and Impressionism, though. This aesthetic confusion leads to my next point. In music and art, dimensions of time are upside down. Art transcends time through his memorable inventions. The excerpt number 16 emphasizes the wild joy of once and for all innovation that characterizes great art. Let us listen to the second movement of our ideal septet, the scherzo of Franck's quartet in F sharp minor, like the Sonata of Vinteuil. Franck, whose contrast between his artistic genius and his austere and rather obscure life influenced the profile of Vinteuil. This scherzo, with its mysterious instrumental colors and its restlessness, is from another world. Isn't this piece absolutely unique? It is a great theme of Proust. Art creates unique worlds. There is a world of Vinteuil and of Franck, whereas in everyday life we meet types of men and women following general trends and behaviors. Quotation number 17. C'est bien un accent unique auquel s'élèvent, auquel reviennent malgré eux ces grands chanteurs que sont les musiciens originaux, et qui est une preuve de l'existence irréductiblement individuelle de l'âme. Ce chant, différent de celui des autres, où Vinteuil l'avait-il appris, entendu? Chaque artiste semble ainsi comme le citoyen d'une patrie inconnue, oubliée de lui-même, différente de celle d'où viendra, appareillant pour la terre, un autre grand artiste. Let us hear such an eternal song by one of Proust's favorite musicians, Beethoven. Beethoven said of the cavatine of his 13th quartet, quote, "Never my music will have had such an effect on me." The title cavatine refers to the opera. In it, we hear a voice singing an infinite and pathetic melody. Its form is unique and has cost Beethoven a huge work of assembling its diverse motifs. Let us hear them unfold through time. conclusion, our last movement. And it will be with Beethoven, since the ultimate reference for Proust is the classics. The classic French playwright, Jean Racine in literature, and Beethoven in music. Paradoxically, whereas Reynaldo Hahn, the musician, only loves music setting a text, Proust, the writer, prefers pure music. In that, he is a classic. But Proust is not a classic like Saint-Saëns, the formalist, who declared after the premiere of La Bonne Chanson that Fauré had gone crazy, and who ostentatiously left the score of Franck's piano quintet on music stand as a sign of contempt while he was premiering it at the piano. Proust's classicism is not about perfect form in an intellectual way. It is about working on motifs and giving them a shape that matches an inner existential drive, very much reminding on Beethoven's artistic work. Being truthful to one's sensation and impressions is the task. Quotation number 18. Il fallait tâcher d'interpréter les sensations comme des signes et d'essayer de les convertir en un équivalent spirituel. Or, ce moyen, qui me paraissait le seul, qu'était-ce autre chose que faire une œuvre d'art? Lire ce livre intérieur de signes inconnus consistait en un acte de création où nul ne peut nous suppléer ni même collaborer avec nous. Ce déchiffrement fait que l'art est ce qu'il y a de plus réel, la plus austère école de la vie et le vrai jugement dernier. Proust has a high vision of literature and of art. Only through art can we reach our authentic and true personality. The narrator, under the impression of the septet, understands that art is superior to life and decides to sacrifice his life to art. Proust himself will die of working on his huge novel that occupied him during the last decade of his life. The sacrifice of life is necessary. Quotation number 19. Le bonheur est salutaire pour le corps, mais c'est le chagrin qui développe les forces de l'esprit, pour nous remettre chaque fois dans la vérité, nous forcer à prendre les choses au sérieux, arrachant chaque fois les mauvaises herbes de l'habitude, du scepticisme, de la légèreté, de l'indifférence. Il est vrai que le chagrin finit par tuer. À chaque nouvelle peine trop forte, nous sentons une veine de plus qui saillit, développe sa sinuosité mortelle au long de notre tempe, sous nos yeux. Et c'est ainsi que peu à peu se font ces terribles figures ravagées du vieux Ambroise, du vieux Beethoven, de qui tout le monde se moquait. Mais puisque l'électricité de la foudre peut photographier, puisque notre sourde douleur au cœur peut élever au-dessus d'elle, comme un pavillon, la permanence visible d'une image à chaque nouveau chagrin, acceptons le mal physique qu'il nous donne pour la connaissance spirituelle qu'il nous apporte. Laissons se désagréger notre corps, puisque chaque nouvelle parcelle qui s'en détache vient, cette fois lumineuse et lisible, s'ajouter à notre œuvre. We cannot help thinking here of Proust, lying on his bed and struggling to convert his painful existence into motives for his great work. This supposes a special way of listening to oneself and to art. Do you remember the narrator in his bedroom listening to the sounds of the streets? That is how Proust himself liked to listen to music. He used to invite musicians to his home, usually at night, literally waking them up at night to come and play for him. Several occurrences of this. They were playing music in the piano room, but he was listening to them from the next room, the bedroom, lying on his bed. Better or worse, invited one night by the Duchesse de Clermont-Tonnerre in her theater box, he only heard the play turning his back to the stage. Art must be listened in an indirect way, maybe with closed eyes. That is the condition to perceive it as an unfolding enigma, giving form to the mysterious existence. To end our program and our ideal septet, let us hear now the last movement of the 16th quartet, opus 135, the last one of Beethoven. Here is the tempo indication for this movement. Grave, ma non troppo, muss es sein. Allegro, es muss sein, as it must be. It must be. Beethoven accomplished an incredible and obsessive work on a motif. This motif is borrowed from the theme Let Him Be Crucified from The Passion According to St. Matthew by G.S. Bach, that would be used also by Liszt in his preludes and by Franck in his symphony. Artistic filiation, rather than natural one, questions and answers of pure motives. After the passion and the despair, final artistic joy interspersed with peaceful silence. Let us hear this piece of great classicism to conclude our evening.
Thank you.